actually to a number of people who took vaccinations, who took blood transfusions, and
tell about the smallpox, Professor Scott. That I find to be extraordinary.
Now, when they found that an excellent way to send the disease to people they wanted ill or dying, and they found that vaccines was a very good way to get this disease into people, they came up with a great idea. They would go over to Africa and they would vaccinate as many black people as they could possibly lay their hands on with the help of the governments of those countries, which were colonial governments, and had the military from Belgium and the military from France and the military from Portugal and from Britain and so on to help them out. They just said, okay, let's go over to those countries and we'll give all the folks there a vaccine against smallpox. And, well, that was a great and glorious idea, and the United States proved itself to be very, very generous, being the lead financer of 17 groups of people that were sent from Atlanta, Georgia, over to Africa for a number of years. And with the cooperation of the governments of those countries, which, as I say, were colonial governments of European powers and American powers, they rounded up black people and injected them with a vaccine against smallpox. They said to these black people who didn't know what they were getting, now you know the disease smallpox, you won't get it after you take this vaccine. And whether they wanted to take it or not, they had to take it. They were rounded up by the police and by the military, and millions and millions of black people were given a vaccination against smallpox. And it worked. It destroyed smallpox. However, what the people didn't know was that in that vaccine was this slow virus, this lentavirus as they call it, and that was the agent of the AIDS disease. And after about 4 or 5 years, people who were protected against smallpox began to present with a new disease called AIDS, and along with a whole lot of opportunistic diseases coming from the fact that they lost their immunity to those diseases. So the folks unwillingly, in many cases, but forced to take the vaccinations by their governments, exchanged their smallpox disease for acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and hence in 4, 5, 6 years, AIDS began to spring up all over the continent of Africa. It also sprung up in a couple of other places. It sprung up in Brazil, for example, and the University of Tulane University in New Orleans was instrumental in getting the disease down to Brazil through Dr. Alton Ochsner of Tulane University, who had many links with Brazil, who in turn had many links with Portugal, who in turn at that point was a colonial power. And they wanted to thin the population of Brazil out, and consequently they recruited Dr. Ochsner's special agents, and they also forced the vaccine onto the people of Goa, a small part of India. So AIDS was communicated to the target populations in the colonial powers, domains, and AIDS became a very big factor in the death rate till today, where you have, as I say, the 8,000 people or more dying from AIDS.
Now, the interesting thing about Dr. Ochsner's work is that there are two varieties of AIDS. There's the AIDS that most of the world has, and there's the Portuguese variety, which is only found in the Portuguese settlements, or primarily found in Portuguese settlements.
Yes.
So that shows you how it was developed and how it was administered, that they would have the one that is exclusive of the other, doesn't it?
Yes, having two species of AIDS break out at the same time is really quite a miraculous development in the world of biology. But the thing was that they established a laboratory in Portugal, and they established one in Belgium. And the one in Belgium was almost directly under the care of an American called Hilary Koprowski of the Wistar.
More when we get back. We need to take a break right now. So you have two parallel programs being developed, and they are developing slightly different forms of AIDS. Would it be fair to say that this virus would not have mutated into two different forms? This had to be laboratory conducted, and it couldn't be an accident because it wouldn't just get out by mistake. Is that all fair to say, Professor Scott?
Forms of AIDS is based upon the fact that two different laboratories using two different kinds of primates used their kidneys to grow one of the disease factors, which was the mycoplasma. And the one in Belgium, of course, was developed by the Belgians under the eye of Hilary Koprowski of the Wistar Institute. And Hilary Koprowski was formerly in the employ of the Rockefellers. And then, of course, the other factor was the disease agent developed by the Portuguese under the aegis of Alton Ochsner, and the monkeys that were grown down in the Delta primate farm outside of New Orleans, and shipped over to the Belgian colonies as well as to Brazil. So AIDS essentially spread by vaccinations. And then there's the chronic fatigue syndrome. How do you get that, which does not...
Oh, wait a second. One more thing on AIDS. One more thing on the spread of AIDS. It has attacked a lot of the blacks, especially in Africa. Okay, we went over there, gave them smallpox vaccinations that were tainted with AIDS. How did it become a gay disease? How did it become the gay cancer? Was it all because of Patient Zero, the guy who was a airline attendant with Air Canada who flew from Africa and then ended up on Fire Island and gave it to about half the gays in America and Canada? Is that how it got spread? Is that what happened? What happened? Why was it so big among the gays?
Officials in the U.S. health realm would have you believe. But the fact of the matter is that working with Hilary Koprowski in Camp Linde in the Belgian Congo, developing the AIDS pathogen, was Dr. Fritz Reinhardt. And Dr. Fritz Reinhardt was working on hepatitis. And he developed a vaccine that was supposed to prevent hepatitis. And they thought, well, here's a great opportunity to do something important here. When the AIDS crisis breaks out in Africa, as they knew it would, there will be a lot of people, well-meaning people throughout the world and throughout the United States, who will say, we've got to do something about this terrible disease. Well, one way to keep them from doing it is to give the disease to a bunch of homosexuals, because the average person 20, 25 years ago in the United States and the world was anti-homosexuality to a much greater extent than they are today.
Let's talk about this when we got back. How did the disease get to the blacks? We know that through smallpox vaccination, and the homosexuals through hepatitis vaccinations. Vaccinations, common thing, solving one problem, giving another. We'll be right back with Professor Donald Scott.